Fans have been salivating about the next installment of The White Lotus for more than 12 months. It finally hit the screens on the 30th of October. This time, the story's about a group of wealthy vacationers at the White Lotus Resort, and it brings a brand new cast with it. But what happens if you've already finished it and are still itching for more White Lotus? Don't worry, we've got your back. Instead of rewatching, stay tuned for a whole list of movies that give off that perfect White Lotus vibe. It'll make your festive season worthwhile. First up, The Grand Budapest Hotel. This is one of the most iconic films in the subtle satirical comedy drama genre. The movie's set in a resort, much like The White Lotus. But the events take place in an imaginary Eastern European country, Dubrovka, in the 20th century. The ensemble cast is versatile, and the solid writing makes the film exciting and dynamic without letting up the tension. Important issues are explored in The Grand Budapest Hotel, things like social hierarchy, race, and loyalty, and the audience remains engaged by the costumes, production design, and unique cinematography. Burn After Reading from 2008 brings together the iconic cinematic duo of Ethan and Joel Coen. A satirical dark comedy script could hardly land in safer hands. The film is set up as a spy story. The focus is on the adventures of two people who work in a gym, Brad Pitt and Frances McDormand, and they try to make a fortune from memoirs misplaced by an ex-CIA analyst. Only, these are only memoirs, not highly classified and sensitive government documents. The film explores the repercussions of actions that seem completely unrelated at first, but end up being inextricably linked. This is similar to what The White Lotus achieves as the audience becomes familiar with the characters and their connections on the resort. Then, Parasite from 2019. This one got a Best Picture Academy Award. In the best imaginable way, Parasite shocked and surprised audiences all the way to the top when it was released. A poor Korean family takes over a luxurious, affluent home. They fool the owners in a tale that becomes tragic at times and elevated at others. But the film remains hilarious all the way through. Olivia's best friend Paula from The White Lotus has similar themes in her story arc, and explores how one could justify stealing from wealthy people. But as it turns out, even rich people have feelings, and they feel attachment just like any other person in the world. Also from 2019, Ready or Not stars Samara Weaving, Andy McDowell, Adam Brody, Nikki Guadagni, Elise Levesque, Melanie Scrofano, and Henry Czerny. The Ladomas family in Ready or Not screams dysfunction, probably like no other movie in movie history. This is a dark comedy with serious horror undertones, and it exceeds expectations by a mile. The storytelling is unique. For example, Grace has to make it through a night of horrible satanic attacks from her in-laws, and it's all part of a wedding ritual. If anyone understands scrutiny by in-laws, it's the White Lotus character Rachel Patton. She's married to Shane, a real estate agent, and on her honeymoon, she has the worst imaginable time when she realizes she can't trust her husband or in-laws. Also, Knives Out is a must. The White Lotus is essentially a murder mystery, but it leaves the murder aspect on the back burner in a real hurry so the plot and characters can get on with the rest of the series. But the audience does observe the results of the actions that led to the deceased's death. If you're craving a lighthearted murder mystery, Knives Out is something you have to see. It's a modern classic of the murder mystery genre. In the story, Detective Benoit Blanc takes the audience on a very personal journey as he solves the mysterious death that takes place in the heart of a dysfunctional super wealthy family. If you're rich, privileged, and have a minimal sense of responsibility or accountability, you'll make a great leading character in a story like Thank You for Smoking. Nick Taylor acts as chief spokesman for Big Tobacco, and this movie blatantly displays the depths of depravity some people sink to just to make their point. Arnold, the deceased manager in The White Lotus, bounced between high stress and bundles of responsibility to a character that was aloof and completely out of control. The new visitors and the terribly demanding position he occupies at the resort cause him to blow off steam in the most inappropriate ways imaginable, and karma gets its due for him turning to the proverbial dark side. And what about Crazy Rich Asians from 2018? This is, once again, a tale of dysfunctional families and high-class privilege. The movie's based on the bestseller book that shares the title. Rachel Chu is the focus of the story. She travels to Singapore for a wedding. Her boyfriend's best friend is the groom, and Rachel discovers he's filthy, crazy Crazy Rich. The film is adept at creating ways to relate to the characters, but essentially it makes fun of wealthy people's petty issues. Rachel Patton from The White Lotus and Rachel Chu from Crazy Rich Asians both prove how difficult a relationship can be if it comes with oodles of money. 2017 saw the release of Beatrice at Dinner. Mike White, the showrunner of The White Lotus, wrote the story, which follows Selma Hayek's character, a massage therapist, that ends up being part of a wealthy client's business dinner. The tension is pulled tighter and tighter with every new topic of conversation around the table. Beatrice at Dinner's characters, dialogues, and atmosphere served as inspiration for one of Mike's ultimate projects, The White Lotus. He didn't hold back in either project and fully explored the subtle and obvious issues of wealthy, privileged people. Now, Get Out from 2017. Jordan Peele and satire now go hand in hand. He initially became known for his consistent quality when bringing horror stories to the screen. This is his directorial debut, and it puts him on the map as one of the masters of suspenseful and layered dialogue. The story's full of unexpected twists, and the atmosphere he sets up is eerie throughout. The storyline is mostly a commentary on social hierarchy and race, and this is why The White Lotus fans will enjoy the suspense, sans the gore, that Get Out brings. Racial tension is smartly handled in both projects, but they both have totally different outcomes. Sacha Baron Cohen made one of the best modern black comedies with Borat. The mockumentary follows Borat, a Kazakh journo, on an attempt to expose the real USA and its less than conservative values. Borat and The White Lotus are serious commentaries on the broader worldwide society but focus on American society in particular. The interviews in Borat, which Sacha Baron Cohen does in disguise, but uses real American subjects for, are side-splittingly funny. Next, as a special bonus, we have 4 TV series that scratch our White Lotus itch too, starting with Dead to Me. This one stars Christina Applegate and Linda Cardellini. They bond during therapy while grieving the loss of their spouses. Or that's what they say. The show got 4 Emmy nominations and received 2 awards. It was scheduled to end in 2021, but now has a final season slated for a 2022 release due to production delays. The plotline of Dead to Me is unique. It's a love story that speaks to friendship, and it highlights how complex revenge, grief, and remorse can be. The show's creator, Liz Feldman, uses her actors to show just how differently grief manifests in various people. As the director, she illustrates how the on-screen chemistry and mutual grief can create moving picture magic. And she deftly maintains the perfect balance between raw emotion and comic timing. Now, in case you like your comedy a little darker, The End of the Effing World is British. And boy, the writers and comedians in this film know how to work dark comedy. It tells of 2 teenagers embarking on an adventure to escape the cops after a horrific murder, and find a long-lost father while they're at it. The writing is brilliant, and the acting is to die for. In fact, GQ magazine called it the best dark comedy on Netflix. The show balances humor and the highly disturbing subject matter of the story. Hilarious, to say the least. Afterlife is another black comedy drama from Britain, and the original was released by Netflix, oddly enough. But then, the entire show was created, produced, written, directed, and led by Ricky Gervais. In the story, he plays a man who recently lost his wife. Do you see the potential yet? He decides to act out completely in response to his pain. He goes out of his way to make the lives of people around him unbearable, but they simply keep on pitying him, and they keep trying to help him through everything. This is essentially a comedy about being around someone who has lost a loved one, and it turns that discomfort into a bag of laughs, albeit dark. Even with Gervais's sense of humor, this film is still a life-affirming experience. And finally, The Window. This is Netflix's most recent whirl with dark humor, and it features the inimitable Kristen Bell. This show is a hysterical glance at crime dramas and popular culture, as the whole story happens under the guise of a typical murder mystery, and it's told from the perspective of a grieving woman full of addictions and life-altering phobias. Deeply dark and disturbing comedy is perfectly balanced with comments on grief, mental health issues, and real mystery in this show. The House is also a brave step in a new direction for Netflix. It's a stop-motion production from beginning to end, and tells 3 stories, each very different from the other 2, across various worlds and characters. But everything takes place in exactly the same house. So far, this show, a Netflix original, has received rave reviews. It's been called things like delightfully strange, and the creepy undertones of a comforting story make this a fantastic experience. And that, folks, should be keeping you in viewing pleasure throughout the festive season. Thanks for joining us. Please hit subscribe, like, and follow, and look out for our next contribution.